was an added bonus, too. At least these two wouldn't be able to borrow her clothes. Glancing at her watch, Roz ground out her cigarette in the upturned cookie tin lid beside her, rose from the bed, and unsnapped the locks on her trunk. Better unpack, I suppose. Who else is here, I should know? I'm the only new girl, so you'll have to tell me who's who at Elm House. With an air of complicity, she added, I don't want to waste time meeting no-hopers, after all. Just the right balance, she decided, as she stuffed piles of expensive, fastidiously ironed underwear into drawers that were pathetically small. Arrogant, but willing to acknowledge the need for help when necessary. Camilla could provide her with what she needed to know until she formed her own elite circle of friends. Maybe, if this girl was very lucky, she'd be allowed to join it. By the time they reached the echoing dining hall 2 hours later, Camilla was firmly entrenched in her role as party hostess and took great personal pride in introducing Roz to only the right people. Roz, in turn, watched and listened and said not very much at all, as each of the girls was introduced. When she did speak, she was careful to either shock or flatter, only as far as it was possible to get away with it. At midnight, Camilla lay awake, gazing restlessly into the darkness. The room smelled different since Roz's arrival, a mingling of expensive scent, foreign and distinctly forbidden cigarettes, Pernod and potpourri. And she felt different, too, although she couldn't quite understand in which way. Roz was mysterious, beguiling, and had bags of charm, but Camilla couldn't help feeling vaguely uneasy at the same time, because the girl was so incredibly self-possessed. It was unnerving. She had, decided Camilla, a take-it-or-leave-it attitude that surrounded her like an aura, and so far it had captivated everyone. But although she had told Roz practically her entire life story this evening, she had learned scarcely anything in return, except that her full name was Rosemary, which she hated, and that she had been expelled from her last school and had seduced her history teacher, if it were true. And she was so good-looking. Camilla, whose own fair colouring and tendency to plumpness were the bane of her life, wished fervently that she could have looked like Roz, that she could have had even a tenth of her self-assurance. But she knew herself well enough to recognise that that would never happen in a million years. Turning over onto her side and settling down to sleep, she contented herself instead with the thought that she and the tantalising, enigmatic Roz would become friends. Maybe even best friends. Over the course of the next couple of days, Camilla could only watch and admire as Roz established herself with mesmerising thoroughness in her role as leader, managing to make almost every girl feel that she alone was the one with whom Roz most wanted to be. Camilla, despite having succumbed herself, still harboured suspicions that Roz's endless stories weren't always true. They were so bizarre that at least some of them had to have been made up, surely. "But I thought you said you'd spent last summer in Milan," she queried one evening when they were alone together in their room. "That was when you met Claudio." 3 weeks in Milan," corrected Roz in her calm voice, as she refilled their mugs with wine so dry that Camilla had to struggle not to pull a face with every mouthful. "Geneva was afterward. Much more exciting. My mother was having an affair with a Swiss financier, which meant that I could do whatever I liked. I met Sebastian in a restaurant beside Lake Geneva, and by the end of the afternoon, he'd taught me to water ski. By the end of the night," she added with a faint conspiratorial smile, "he'd taught me a lot more." "I don't believe you," thought Camilla,